Okay, we're talking about void judgments today. In order to understand what a void judgment is, we have to understand the nature of jurisdiction. And this is the Bill Priest in the Supreme Court. It's impossible to prove jurisdiction exists absent a substantial nexus with the state, such as a voluntary subscription to a license. In other words, there's got to be a contract. And all jurisdictional facts supporting a claim that supposed jurisdiction exists must appear on the record. And so there's got to be a contract, and evidence of this so-called contract has to be in the record. And in light of the fact that judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, or otherwise act as mere clerks for the involved agency, okay? So it's not a court. He's a clerk. It's a show trial. It's an accepted rule not only in state courts but in federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes. He's a clerk. He's working for the prosecutor. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially. Notice, enforcing statutes. What do you think a law enforcement officer is, boys and girls? They're enforcing statutes. That's why they're called a law enforcement officer. They do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency. So they're working for the prosecutor. It's a kangaroo court. It's a clerk masquerading as judge, but only in a ministerial and not a discretionary capacity. It's a kangaroo court is a term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding in which a person's rights are totally disregarded and which the result is a foregone conclusion because of the bias of the court or other tribunal. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature, and their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. In other words, these clerks masquerading as judges cannot issue orders, they cannot issue warrants, they can't do anything judicial. And so it's all a fraud. They're putting on a show trial for you, and they want to complete a commercial transaction. They are nothing but thieves and pirates. That's exactly what they are. This is all brought to you by bar members. Once jurisdiction is challenged, it must be proven. No sanction can be imposed absent proof of jurisdiction. The right to adjudicate concerning the subject matter, okay, so they have to have subject matter jurisdiction, and that's always the debate because they don't have subject matter jurisdiction, and I'll tell you why. Want the right to adjudicate concerning subject matter in a given case. To constitute this, there are three essential elements. First, the court must have cognizance of the class of cases to which one to be adjudicated belongs. Second, the proper parties must be present. Third, the point decided must be in substance and effect within the issue. And that's U.S. Supreme Bail Priest in the Supreme Court. Now, you need to understand that there's two kinds of courts. Okay, there's inferior courts of limited jurisdiction and there's superior courts of general jurisdiction. An inferior court is a court of limited jurisdiction. Inferior courts do not deal with common law, do not have subject matter jurisdiction over common law issues. The statute that authorizes the courts will define the jurisdiction. If the jurisdiction is limited in any way, then it's an inferior court. This is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. Also, nothing shall be intended to be within the jurisdiction of an inferior court but what is expressly so alleged. And if part of the cause arises within the inferior court and part thereof without it, the inferior court ought not to hold the plea. An inferior court is not of record. That's another important thing, okay? A court not of record is or where the proceedings are not according to the common law, okay? So again, an inferior court is not, there's nothing going on in there about common law, and that is the issue. They don't have jurisdiction over common law issues. This is actually an English court case for all the Satanists, communist Satanists in Canada that like to see their bail priest citations. It was held that nothing shall be intended to be out of the jurisdiction of a superior court, but that which specifically appears to be so, and nothing shall be intended to be within the jurisdiction of an inferior court, but that which is so expressly stated. Okay, so And nothing shall be intended to be out of the jurisdiction of a superior court, but that which especially appears. So in other words, you don't even have to be in a superior court's jurisdiction. And nothing shall be intended to be within the jurisdiction of the inferior court, but that which is so expressly stated. Okay, so an inferior court, again, is a court of limited jurisdiction. And if there's anything in your case, and that's why you bring up common law issues, because that puts a defect in their case, a big defect. And they don't have jurisdiction anyways. I always tell them that. Matter of fact, I don't even go in there. A court of general jurisdiction is presumed to be acting within its jurisdiction until the contrary is shown. And again, a superior court of general jurisdiction is presumed to be acting within its jurisdiction until the contrary is shown. So again, you can show that they don't have jurisdiction. In Canada, the provincial court is an inferior court of limited jurisdiction, and the Queen's Bench is a superior court of general jurisdiction. In Texas, the district court is the court of general jurisdiction. All other courts in Texas are inferior. No person is eligible to be appointed. This is actually taken from the Canada Judges Act. No person is eligible to be appointed to be a judge of a superior court in any province unless, in addition to other requirements prescribed by law, that person is a bar member for 10 years. And after becoming a bar member, basically a bar member. But the point is it's talking about superior courts. Okay, so that's the Superior Court of General Jurisdiction. And that's the Judges Act. Now, this is the Provincial Court Act. The court does not have jurisdiction to hear and adjudicate on a claim or counterclaim to which the title of land is brought into question. See, this is all a list of things that they don't have jurisdiction over. So then, by definition, without even going any further, the provincial court's an inferior court of limited jurisdiction. So they can't deal with common law, if you look at this stuff, some of this stuff is because they can't deal with common law. Anyways, at common law, subject matters not within the jurisdiction. The court may dismiss the proceedings on its own motion. Okay, they cannot deal with common law, and so again, that's why if you're claiming common law, then they don't have subject matter jurisdiction. And then the proper procedure is a writ of prohibition, which I did with the Canadian Satanists, but they intended to railroad me no matter what anyways, and you can see that that's exactly what they did. It was all a kangaroo court. Anyways, a judgment of conviction pronounced by a court without jurisdiction is void, okay, and one imprisoned thereunder may obtain release by habeas corpus, which also I did. And but Tillman, the Satanist, the communist Satanist up there, wanted to railroad me, and that's exactly what they did. There's judgment day's coming, okay. I'm turning this over to God. I'm going to let God, speak now. It will be upcoming. There'll be an upcoming presentation on habeas corpus. Where there is no judgment, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing, such has been the law from the days of Marshalsea. And that's a quote citing Koch, and that's the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, 13 Wall 335. That's 13 Wallace. That's like the early 1800s, and that's a federal court citation. So this citation could be used anywhere because it's citing Koch. A void judgment is one which from its inception is a complete nullity and without legal effect. A void judgment is one which has no legal force or effect whatever. It's an absolute nullity. Its invalidity may be asserted by any person whose rights are affected at any time and any place. It need not be attacked directly, but may be attacked collaterally whenever and wherever it's interposed. In other words, you don't have to appeal it. You don't have to deal with it. It's void. Okay, it's a void judgment. It's nullity. You can attack it. You can bring up the issue at any time and place. A void judgment, insofar as it purports to be a pronouncement of a court, is an absolute nullity. A void order may be attacked either directly or collaterally at any time. You can attack it at any time. A void judgment is one which from its inception is and forever continues to be absolutely null, without legal efficacy, ineffectual to bind the parties, or support a right of no legal force and effect whatever, incapable of enforcement in any manner and to any degree. So when Redmond issued his warrant, it was a void warrant. So then the RCMP pigs that assaulted me based on their warrant, and the city of Calgary pigs that assaulted me. They wanted to participate in this little in this conspiracy, right? And so did the pigs in their jails, the Calgary Remand Center and the Lethbridge Correctional Center. Okay, these Satanists. Okay, so if you go through my videos about the Canada Border Pigs, and it goes through and it shows where I went and dealt with those pigs. They intended to get in on the action. Okay, so they're all accomplices to the assaults, kidnappings, and false imprisonments, so anyways, let's keep going here. Yates versus Village of Hoffman Estates. Okay, this is not every action by any judge is in an exercise of his judicial function. It's not a judicial function for a judge to commit an intentional tort, even though the tort occurs in a courthouse. When the judge acts as a trespasser of the law, when the judge does not follow the law, the judge loses subject matter jurisdiction, and the judge's orders are void and have no legal force or effect. A void order results, okay, for the Satanists, communist Satanists up in Canada. A void order because they want to see their bail priest decisions from Canada. A void order results from a fundamental defect in proceedings or from without jurisdiction ultra vires act of a public body, a judicial office holder. A without jurisdiction ultra vires act is any act which the court did not have power to do. Similarly, if the higher court's order is founded on a lower court's void act or invalid claim, when the higher court's decision will also be void. A void order or claim has no legal effect from the beginning and therefore does not need to be appealed, although for convenience it may sometimes be necessary to have it set aside. Okay, so I don't even need to appeal it. Okay, it's a void order. It's a nullity. Okay, and Redmond knows it, and he is a thief. He is a murderer, okay? Yeah, a murderer, because when you're in jail, you're civilly dead, okay? That's murder, okay? Whereas a voidable order or claim has no legal effect until it's set aside. Therefore, while a void order or claim does not have to be obeyed, it can be ignored, and its nullity can be relied on as a defense when necessary. Redmond, they are nothing but thieves. They are the lowest form of life there is. And we're going to talk about what the demands of justice in this case are, okay? Because the Bible tells us what needs to be done. A void order does not have to be obeyed because, for example, in Crane versus Director of Public Prosecutions, it was stated that an order is void from the beginning. There's no real order of the court. A without jurisdiction ultra vires act is any act which a court did not have the power to do. Similarly, if the higher court's order is founded on the lower court's void act or invalid claim, then the higher court's decision will also be void. Although an appeal is not necessary to set aside a void order, a permission to appeal is requested, and if out of time, the court should grant permission because time does not run because the order is void, and the person affected by it has the right to have it set aside. So in other words, they're supposed to throw out the rules, and because they need to set aside the order. Okay, that's exactly what this is talking about. Don't worry about appeal times. Just go ahead and appeal it anyways, and if it runs out, then set it aside. A void order is incurably void, and all proceedings based on an invalid claim or void act are also void. Even a decision of the higher courts will be void if the decision is founded on an invalid claim or void act, because something cannot be founded on nothing. Okay, so Tillman and Redmond and Bernard and Benkendorf, Judgment Day's coming, boys. Johnston, Harper, all you criminals up there, you communist Satanists, don't get me going. I gotta settle down here. I'm gonna get going. Okay. It's never too late to raise the issue of nullity, and a person can ignore the void order or claim and raise it as a defense when necessary. And it's a nullity. It doesn't exist. Okay, this is all the bail priests in England. Okay, that the Satanists in Canada have to recognize, because they don't want they know that they have to recognize that U.S. works the same way. It's all common law, but they don't care. They had no intention of doing justice in this matter. They're not even competent to do justice, and the proof that they had no intention of doing justice is the fact that they wanted Canadian citations. Yeah, Benkendorf. And in Bellinger versus Bellinger, the House of Lords confirmed that the Void Act is void from the outset, and no court, not even the House of Lords, has jurisdiction to give legal effect to a Void Act, no matter how unreasonable that may seem, because doing so would mean reforming the law. Yeah, so even the Supreme Court cannot do it. So what's going on, boys and girls? Well, they're making war on you. That's exactly what they're doing. This is all a commercial transaction. They want to make some money. That's exactly what it is. They're turning you into merchandise. Exactly what they're doing, okay? Think about it. This is the National Emergencies Act of 1976. And if you look in the preamble, it says an act to terminate certain authorities with respect to national emergencies still in effect. Okay, still in effect, and to provide for orderly implementation and termination of future national emergencies. And so this was approved September 14th, 1976, and it's located at 12 Stat 1255, or I should say 90 Stat 1255. And then in the first paragraph, it says that it's going to be called the National Emergencies Act. And then if you go on in Section 502, it says the provisions of this act shall not apply to the following provisions of the law, the powers and authority conferred thereby, and actions taken thereunder. And so then these are all are not affected by this National Emergencies Act. And so Section 5B of the Act of October 6, 1917, which is codified at 12 U.S.C. 95A and 50 U.S.C. Appendix Section 5. So and that's the Trading with the Enemy Act, okay? That's of 1917. So what they're saying is this First World War Act was still in effect. The state of emergency from the First World War was still in effect, and it's still in effect even to this day. Okay, boys and girls, the Trading with the Enemy Act, okay, is still in effect even to this day. Okay, and so what's the Trading with the Enemy Act say? Well, this is what it says. Among other things, the President, if he shall find it compatible with the safety of the United States and the successful prosecution of the war, they're engaging in warfare on you, boys and girls. It's all just nothing but a giant commercial transaction. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves. During the time of the war, the President may, through any agency that he may designate, and under such rules and regulations that he may prescribe by means of instructions, license, or otherwise, regulate, direct, and compel, mollify, void, prevent, or prohibit, or exercise any right, power, or privilege with respect to any property by any person subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, okay? Any property by any person, okay? Read your so-called 14th Amendment, boys and girls, because any person means anybody that thinks they're a U.S. citizen, and the way these people work, they just go ahead and assault you and let you prove you're not. And that's exactly what they do, okay? That's what these Canada border pigs did. Even though I went and served them with all sorts of stuff telling them I'm not one of their slaves, they went ahead and did it anyways. And they just railroad you. They are nothing but thieves. They want to complete their commercial transaction. Anyways, don't get me going. And you don't think this is going on in Canada? This is the Prize Act in Canada. The court shall, subject to this section, take cognizance of all and judicially proceed upon all and all manner of captures, seizures, prizes, reprisals made under the authority of the bitch, no disrespect to dogs intended, of all ships, aircraft, goods, and if you go on to down to the line part, it says belonging to any enemy country or citizens or subjects thereof, or any other persons inhabiting any of the countries, territories, dominions of an enemy country, or that otherwise condemnable as prize. That means anybody and everybody. These people are the lowest form of life there is, and they're making merchandise of you. They want to complete a commercial transaction. There's the war on drugs during the 80s, and there was news media articles that talked about how the CIA was importing drugs. And so then you think about it. It's one group of drug dealers putting another group of drug dealers out of business. So then, really, if you think about it, it's really a war on you and me. That's exactly what it is. And then there's a war on crime in the 1990s. Why do you think they use that terminology? They want to have warfare. They got to have these commercial transactions to make money for their handlers. So the U.S. now has a bigger percentage of people in prison than any other country on the planet. They sell them into prison, into slavery. That's exactly what they do. And so this is really a war on you and me. And now the war on terror. That's the latest war. And they can make that anything. And they've gone and reinterpreted everything. And anybody that objects, I guess I'm a terrorist. Matter of fact, if you watch my U.S. border pigs, that's exactly what they're accusing me of. When I have never breached the peace, and they breach the peace every day. So the war on terror, 2000s to today, the CIA created ISIS. If you watch the X-22 report, there's a guy, it's a YouTube channel. He's actually got a couple YouTube channels. There's one where he does these interviews that are very revealing. And if you watch this, he provides a lot of evidence that the CIA created ISIS, CIA created Osama bin Laden, and then if you think about it, I mean, who's the war on? It's the war on me and you. That's exactly what it is. And this is Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. A mixed war is one which is made on one side by public authority and the other by mere private persons. Merriam-Webster Dictionary, under international law of warfare, all parties to a cause must appear by nom de guerre because an alien enemy cannot maintain an action during a war in his own name. So, a nom de guerre. What's a nom de guerre? A nom de guerre is a soon name under which a person fights, paints, writes. Pseudonym. Origin of nom de guerre is French. It's literally a war name. And that's why they spell your name in all block capital letters. That's a nom de guerre, boys and girls. They prosecute people in their so-called courts. They prosecute wars. Any war is a giant commercial transaction. The U.S. citizen's an enemy of the state. Obama is using this as justification to murder anybody who feels like murdering, especially those who are stupid enough to think they're U.S. citizens. So, first of all, they fabricate evidence of the U.S. citizen slave in a variety of ways, like in their kangaroo courts when you do a filing fee under the Gold Reserve Act of 1934. Federal Reserve notes are meant for internal use of the government. So then, if you use Federal Reserve notes, then you're a slave. And then, if you don't file a fee, then they demand this impecuniosity affidavit, and it's a pauper's affidavit. And in common law, a pauper doesn't have any rights, and so now they can use their equity. And their forms ask for spouses, for debts, for the last four of Social Security number. They're just fabricating all sorts of evidence of U.S. citizens, income, which is corporate profits, and birth date. Okay, and that's hearsay. Do you remember when you were given birth? I don't remember. Somebody told me what the birth date is, but I don't remember. That's all hearsay. Government issued ID. They want government issued ID. Birth date. It's got birth date on it. It's got an image. It got a name. All of that is hearsay. Your name. How do you know that's your name? Somebody told you it's your name, but do you know? Do you have first-hand knowledge that that's your name? I don't. It's all hearsay. They're wanting you to give hearsay because otherwise it's not admissible as evidence. Secondly, once they fabricated evidence of their slave, then they assault you, kidnap you, and falsely imprison you, sell your property, and their clerks masquerading as judges call it a contract. That's exactly what they do. They're making merchandise of you. They're selling you into slavery. They're engaging in a commercial transaction. And if you plea bargain, you can never appeal. It's not a void judgment, and you cannot do a habeas corpus. So you've got to understand that. Don't ever plea bargain. So why is there fraud? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons why there's fraud. First of all, the judge is a clerk masquerading as a judge. It's not a trial. It's a show trial. It's a kangaroo court. The judge is not neutral or unbiased. The judge is working for the prosecutor. They even conspire together in open court. They do not have jurisdiction. They're making war on you. They're dragging you into their satanic religious ceremony. That's exactly what it is. It's a commercial transaction. They're not competent to do justice. It's not a court. The corporation does not have standing to do anything in any court. And this is a couple citations that support all of that. First of all, it's a fundamental right of a party to have a neutral and detached judge preside over judicial proceedings. So then it's not a judicial proceeding. It's not a judge. It's not a court. And then this is Rundle versus Delaware back in 1852 when there was a Supreme Court. My opinion is, and long has been, that the mayor and aldermen of a city corporation, or the presidents and directors of a bank, or the presidents and directors of a railroad company or other similar corporations are true parties that sue and are sued as trustees and representatives of the constantly changing stockholders. A corporation, therefore, being not a natural person but a mere creature of the mind, invisible and tangible, cannot be a citizen of a state or of the United States, and cannot fall within the terms or the power of the above-mentioned article, and can therefore neither plead nor be pleaded in the courts of the United States. So again, when any court case has a plaintiff like state of Texas or a Queen of Right of Alberta or a Queen of Right of Canada or Department of Justice or state of California or United States, okay, or any corporation, it's a fraud, okay? That's all these people do. They're Satanists. They're liars. That's what Satanists are. They're liars. Everything they do is a lie. Why do you think, I'll tell you right now, when Obama comes on TV, I change the channel, because I'm not going to sit there and be lied to. And how do you know when he's lying? Well, think about it, boys and girls. His lips are moving. So he's a Satanist by definition. Think about it, boys and girls. I'm not going to sit there and be lied to, so I change the channel. It's a bill of attainder, boys and girls. Means a legislative act, no matter what their form, that apply to either named individuals or to easily ascertainable members of a group in such a way as to inflict punishment on them without a judicial trial. It's a bill of attainder. That's right. That's what it is, boys and girls. And this is Black's Law Dictionary 8th edition. Bill of Attainder is a special legislative act that imposes a death sentence on a person without a trial. Well, it's without a trial, and it's prescribing punishment without a trial. And this is actually, it's a bill of pains and penalties, but it's actually a bill of attainder because if you're in their jail, you're civilly dead, and so it's death. A legislative act, though similar to a bill of attainder, prescribes punishment less severe than capital punishment, and it still falls under the U.S. Constitution that requires that prohibits bills of attainder. So it's full of fraud. There's all sorts of fraud going on here, boys and girls. Once a fraud, always a fraud. Things invalid from the beginning cannot be made valid by some subsequent act. A thing void in the beginning does not become valid by lapse of time. Time cannot render valid an act void in its origin. Out of fraud, no action arises. Any act by any government official conceal the fraud becomes an act of fraud. It's a fraud to conceal a fraud. That's Tillman. Okay, Tillman's aiding and abetting them. That's exactly what he's doing, and so is Rook and Harper. They're all helping him out here. Okay, they're helping conceal the fraud. That's exactly what they're doing. And fraud is inexcusable and unpardonable. Fraud and deceit should excuse no man. And they're all part of it. They're all in on it. They're trying to help cover it up. And it's not going away. Judgment Day's coming, boys and girls. Any fraud amounts to injustice. Fraud and justice never dwell together. These are all maxims of law, okay? If you look at these are all maxims of law. These are old as time itself. Anyways, fraud and justice never dwell together, and what is good and just, if sought by force or fraud, becomes bad and unjust. And these are all maxims of law. And Brutum Fulman, this brings up a little story. I filed a lawsuit in Texas courts and against someone, and they got it removed into federal court, and I didn't want it in federal court. I figured the judge was going to dismiss it, so I figured I'd just dump on him. And so I just dumped on him. I called him a judicial whore. I told him I had nothing but contempt for a so-called court. I told him that everything he does is a fraud, and he didn't have authority for anything. I told him that any orders that he did were Brutum Fulman. I told him that he was that it's all a fraud and a nullity, and anything he did was Brutum Fulman. And Brutum Fulman's an empty noise, an empty threat, a judgment void upon his face, which is in legal effect no judgment at all, and by which no rights are divested, and from which none can be obtained, neither binds nor bars anyone. And Redmond's order is Brutum Fulman, and so is Tillman's, and so is J.D. Rook. Okay, Rook's order, that's Brutum Fulman. And Judgment Day's coming. It means nothing. Okay, it's all of his clerks that like to perjure their oaths. They'll go ahead and follow it, and and they're all in on it. Okay, that's why I say these are Canadian Satanist communists. Okay, because that's exactly what they are. They're nothing but a gang of thieves and criminals. And this is Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. So, Satanists in America. Mark Passio is a former Satanist priest. He's brilliant. He's got some natural law videos. It's all on YouTube. I would highly recommend you watch him because you might learn something. He has really got a lot of really good information on his YouTube channel. He talks about the pillars of Satanism. One of them is moral relativism. There's no absolute right or wrong. Truth is relative. We just make up what's right or wrong. What's right or wrong is what we decide today, and tomorrow it'll be something else. And he says that 2/3 of the people believe in moral relativism in America, and I think that's being generous. I think it's more, actually. Pillars of Satanism, and some of the other pillars of Satanism are, which he calls them forms of mind control. He says survival is the highest law of Satanism. And social Darwinism. Certain classes of society think they're most fit to rule. Gee, that sounds like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderbergers. Postulates the survival of the most socially ruthless, ultimate responsibilities and self-preservation. Eugenics, okay? The elite get to determine who lives or dies. Useless eaters. Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth's husband, Prince Philip, is on the record as calling all of us useless eaters, okay? That means he wants to reduce the population by a bill or two because we're all useless eaters. And again, he's a Satanist. And so is the bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. And so this is where it's all coming from. I mean, why do you think these people are serious? Of course they are. The Pope was recently convicted by the International Common Law Court for murder, all sorts of crimes. They were doing child sacrifice. It was a child sacrifice ring that was operating in multiple places in Europe and North America, and they were slitting the throats of children and drinking their blood. If you could imagine, what an abomination! And there was like 48 eyewitnesses. It's not like there's a couple people that come out and said this. There's 48 eyewitnesses. I mean, this is just an abomination. I just can't believe it. Anyways. Pillars of Satanism, forms of mind control. Another one is order takers. They're responsible for all of the atrocities in history. They just follow orders without thinking about whether it's a lawful order or not. They're willing slaves. And this is Mark Passio's YouTube channel, What on Earth? I would highly recommend you go there and watch some of his videos. The guy's brilliant. He took Latin in high school. I thought he might have gone to a Catholic school when he went to high school, but somebody sent me an email, said they learned Latin and didn't go to a Catholic school. So anyways, and you know, I gotta say that I rill on the Vatican, but I have some of my best friends are Catholic, and so I certainly don't want to say anything negative about anybody that happens to be Catholic, because there's wonderful friends of mine that happen to be Catholic. And just because the Vatican is doing this stuff doesn't mean that they condone it or agree with it or anything else. As a matter of fact, there's many people. There's a Father Malachi Martin, who used to be on Coast to Coast AM, used to talk about the satanic nature of the Vatican. So even there's all sorts of wonderful people in the Catholic Church, and don't ever think that I'm railing on people that happen to be Catholic. Anyways, so let's keep going here. Anybody who's wearing a military uniform is an agent of the Vatican. And this is taken from Article 10 of the Concordat of 1933. The wearing of clerical dress or religious habit on the part of lay folk is liable to the same penalty on the part of the state as the misuse of military uniform. And so that's basically anybody that's got a military uniform is an agent of the Vatican. I mean, think about it. I mean, that's what these giant commercial transactions called wars are done, with people in military uniforms. Almost all so-called governments are bankrupt and owned and operated by the Vatican. At common law, a sheriff would have a star only. At common law, there's no uniform. The World War II war crimes tribunals, all the Nazis claimed they were just following orders, okay? That means they were Satanists. And they suffered death by hanging, or they spent the rest of their life in jail, and some of them are still hunted to this day. And the Vietnam War, the My Lai massacre, they were all convicted of murder, or at least some of them were. Today's order, our takers are everywhere, okay? And and let me specify, you know, I rail on these Canadian Satanists, okay? And there's plenty of Satanists in America too, but not all of our public officials are Satanists, okay? The bar members are, okay? There's no doubt about it. The bar, if you watch my bar members video, which basically means all judges, okay? All judges and all lawyers are, okay? But that doesn't mean there's varying degrees, okay? Some of them are much more corrupt than other ones, and you need to understand that, and you know, quite frankly, there's some bar members that I like this Karen Hudis. You know, I mean, she is actually brilliant, and you know, I'm still in the wait and see mode on her. I mean, some people say that she's a disinformation agent, and she might be, but I've seen her do a lot of really wonderful things, so I'm still in the wait and see mode. I'm not going to go out and start saying anything negative about her yet, and she's a bar member. So not all bar members are criminals. I mean, she's trying to have a positive effect, in my opinion, and you know, I'm in the wait and see mode. And so the important thing to understand is that you know, even though there are criminals, these bar members, I mean, there's varying degrees, and while I'd like to see some of them do that little dance they do at the end of a common law rope, I mean, if you're a Christian, then you gotta, everybody's given the opportunity to repent. And so we have to give them the opportunity to repent, and that's part of this process right here, is giving people the opportunity to repent. Things that you see every day using satanic philosophy of moral relativism are false flag operations, the end justifies the means; agent provocateurs, the end justifies the means; entrapment, okay, think about it, boys and girls. An agent provocateur is what they were doing in oh man, in the Northeast recently, and in these places where all these civil disturbances were going on in Missouri, okay, St. Louis, and up in the Northeast in I'm thinking Philadelphia, but it's not Philadelphia. It's near there. Anyways, where all these disturbances were going on because of these order takers murdering people, and so they would send these people going out doing these. Oh man, the terminologies are just escaping me right now. I can't believe it. But anyways, they're doing these demonstrations, and so then the order takers go and send agent provocateurs in there to go and foment people to do something that's illegal so they can arrest them. And so then the entrapment is basically where it comes out in court that that's what happened. And so there's lots of evidence that Sandy Hook, that a lot of these, like this thing that went on in Waco recently with the bikers, that it was all false flag operations, which means it's agent provocateurs putting on a show for everybody, and because they have a political agenda. And all court cases, if you think about it, all court cases are Satanist. It's a kangaroo court. Unless it's a common law court, all court cases are satanic, because the judge is a clerk. He's playing stupid. He's working for the prosecutor. If you don't know the law or fail to do something properly or follow the right procedure, they sell you into slavery. What's right today is something else tomorrow. In other words, someone will get off, one guy will get off, and the other one won't because of some legal technicality. You know, I mean, it's all satanic. It's diabolically evil. They don't care about doing the right thing or anything like that. They want to complete that commercial transaction. And if you don't know the law or fail to do something properly or follow the right procedure, they'll sell you into slavery. They're making merchandise out of you is what they're doing. Okay, think about it, boys and girls. They have no authority, and they're they're using their satanic, unconstitutional Uniform Commercial Code. Everything they do is under color of law. They even dismiss cases because they're not colorable enough, not enough fraud. Therefore, it's all a fraud. It's a lie, and that's exactly how they intend it. The so-called judges actually bought and paid for a clerk masquerading as a judge, which is a fraud and a lie. The only rights are those granted by government, which is also a fraud and a lie. And that's what they intend. And if you don't do something at the right time, or say something at the right time, or do or say something too late or at the wrong time, they'll pretend you didn't say it. That's more fraud. A U.S. citizen's a fictitious entity, which is a fraud. Lochnerizing is an insult. That's Lochner versus New York. That's basically a case where the judge actually came out and said that that the sovereignty, talked about sovereignty and it's right, and the guy was sovereign or something like that, and they went and turned him into like some sort of he was that was back when they weren't all the bar didn't exist, or it was certainly not infiltrated by the bar members or the bar. Anyways, that was back when they didn't do that, and so they basically blacklisted that judge, and now they call it Lochnerizing. And so if I do not use the right words, they'll pretend I didn't say it. This is back when we had a real Supreme Court. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is the states and governments were made for man, at the same time how true it is that his creatures and servants have first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. A state a state like a merchant makes a contract. A dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. Think about it, boys and girls. This is all Satanism, okay? If they're lying, if they're sneaking around behind you, they're Satanists, okay? That's what Satanism is all about, okay? That's moral relativism again. What's right or wrong is something else today, okay? So these are all Satanists, okay? And that's what's going on. This is really what it comes down to, is this is all Satanism, and these people are just, they're trying to complete a commercial transaction. It's exactly what they're doing. First, the communist Satanists assault you, then they kidnap you, then they falsely imprison you, then they drag you to their bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge with their kangaroo court, then they steal your property and demand excise taxes to get your property back, then they force you to go see their bought and paid for shrink, who will declare you insane if you do not agree to get their license. Then the communist Satanists will call it a contract. That's exactly what they do, and they do that in Canada, and I can tell you from firsthand knowledge. But they also do it here. I have friends of mine that have talked about it in the U.S. The end justifies the means is satanic. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, and put darkness for light and light for darkness. And there's a technical remote viewers. The U.S. Army had a program for technical remote viewing for over 20 years. They canceled the program in the 1990s when the Soviet Union broke up. They all went into private business. According to these remote viewers, I'm certainly not one, but I know people that have the skill, and it's amazing. But they actually, I've seen some of the training videos, and they say anybody can learn it. You can remote view any point in space and time. There's a giant library in the fabric of space-time which everything that's ever done is recorded. It's called the Akashic Record. And so all of the actions of these Satanists are now permanently recorded in the fabric of space-time. Judgment Day's coming, okay? And I think it's started. The economy's a basket case. I think it's only going to get worse. And I think that we're going to start getting some major earth changes, and all sorts of stuff is going to go on. Judgment Day's coming, and it's coming very soon. I think it's gonna, there's gonna be, I mean, if you look at the frequency and magnitude of earthquakes since the 30s, in the 30s, the biggest earthquake in a year was like a 4, and now we're getting 7s, 8s, 9s. I mean, there's something going on, and it has nothing to do with global warming that these Satanists want you to think. So maybe it's Planet X and Uburu. I don't know. But there's definitely something going on, and because the frequency and magnitude of earthquakes has been going up, it's gone up exponentially since the 30s, and so there's definitely something going on, and Judgment Day's coming, and This is Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England, this law of nature being coeval with man, dictated by God himself. Okay, so the law of nature is dictated by God and is superior in obligation to any other. These people, these Satanists, are completely ignoring the law of nature. It's binding over all the globe in all countries at all times. No human laws are any validity. This is the law of nature, is where common law comes from. And if contrary to this, such as them, no human laws are any validity. If contrary to this, as such of them as well derive all their force, all their authority immediately from this original, from law of nature. Okay, and Blackstone was there's phrases that Blackstone, or I should say Jefferson, used from Blackstone's commentaries in the Declaration of Independence. Matter of fact, the law of nature talks about the law of nature and nature's God in the Declaration of Independence. And this is a court case. All acts of the legislature apparently contrary to natural rights. Okay, as in the law of nature, in our law must be in the considered as void. The laws of nature are the laws of God. Okay, whose authority can be superseded by no power on earth. The legislature cannot obstruct our obedience to him, and that's exactly what these Baal priests in the legislature are doing. Okay, think about it. All of these, if these clerks are masquerading as judges, if this is a bill of attainder, okay, this is all coming from the legislature. That's exactly where it's coming from, and from Congress. Okay, that's exactly where it's coming from. So that's the source of the problem. Okay, and the real problem is bar members that are in there and that are doing this stuff. That's exactly the source of the problem. It's all satanic, because the bar members are all Satanists. And this is 2 Peter 2 and 3, and through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now the long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. Okay, and again, that's judgment day for these Satanists. And Deuteronomy 24 and 7, this is what needs to happen. If anybody you think you're Christians, then this is what needs to happen, especially to these Satanists up in Canada. But if a man be found stealing any of his brethren or of the children of Israel, make merchandise of him or selleth him. Okay, that's what they did. They sold me into slavery, and they do it here too. Okay, and then that thief must die, and thou shalt put evil away from among you. So all you Canadian Christians, if you think you're Christians, then you need to put evil away from among you. Okay, that's what needs to happen, boys and girls up there, and Judgment Day's coming. Okay, and you know, there's the technical remote viewers that we talked about a minute ago said that in the I think it's going to be the next Blood Moon. There's another Blood Moon series that's going to happen in 2032, and that's perfect timing for something big that's supposed to happen. And the remote viewers are saying that the United States is going to break up, and there'll be a period wars between the states, and then out of that will emerge a North American Union, which will consist of 13 states. Canada will be one, Mexico will be another, and then there'll be 11 of what's left of the 50 American states. And what'll happen is that sometime soon after that, which I think is going to be around 2032, according to the remote viewers, the Chinese are going to come at us with an army of 200 million. Oh, when the United States breaks up, then the Chinese will go on a rampage, and they'll conquer all the way down to Australia, and the jihads will lay waste to Europe and all of that stuff, and which makes sense because there'll be a giant power vacuum in the world. But anyways, and so then, you know, at some point, they don't really say when, but I think it's around 2032 when that next Blood Moon series happens. The Chinese, by then there'll be a land bridge, there'll be a bunch of earth changes, there'll be a land bridge across the Bering Straits, and the Chinese will come at us with an army of 200 million men, and we'll take out 150 million coming across the Bering Straits, and we'll turn China into a smoking hole, but 50 million will make it through, and they'll come down down the west coast, and I think that they'll come down through Alberta, and they'll kill everything that moves in their path, and the last great battle will happen in Denver, and I think that they'll lay waste to Alberta, and they'll deserve every bit of it. And you know, I have friends there, and I don't wish that on anybody, quite frankly, but you know, that's what I think. I think that that'll be the judgments of God. Anyways, Judgment Day's coming. I know thy works and thy tribulation and poverty, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they're Jews or Christians or whatever, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Okay, and that's Revelations 2 and 9. and it's never over until you say it's over. Shake the dust of the earth from off your feet against them and their household. And this is 1 Peter 3:19, by which he went and preached to the spirits in prison. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the hosts of the high ones that are on the high, and the kings of the earth. That means you Tillman, and you Harper, and you Johnston, all you communist Satanists up in Canada. Judgment day's coming, okay? And they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison. After many days shall they be visited. Yeah, according to what I've heard, it's 1,000 years. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Well, think about that. You know, sitteth upon many waters. Gee, that sounds like Admiralty Maritime Law, and which is actually, if you think about it, law merchant, okay, which is and then have committed fornication. Gee, that sounds like an illicit activity. Well, what about these IOUs that are circulating around for money? These banknotes, okay, those aren't real money. They're a fraud. And the inhabitants of earth been made drunk with the wine of the fornication. Well, shoot, I mean, everybody's getting rich, or they think they're getting rich. You know, it's living high off the hog. The stock market's going crazy. Gee, that sounds like what's happening there. Anyways, you know, that's my interpretation of that. And the kings of the earth, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens, and the rocks, and the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us with the face of him that sitteth on the throne from the wrath of the Lamb. And again, that's Book of Revelations. So Judgment Day's coming, Harper and Rook and Tillman. Now one of the things I want to stay here is that while all these Baal priests are out there, some of them are worse than others, and so you can still be successful, and some of them are not as totally satanic as these Canadian pigs, communist Satanists in Canada, so there's things you can do. And you have to, quite frankly, you have to give them a chance to hang themselves, okay? I mean, this is all part of what's happening these days. You know, we the people have been asleep at the wheel, and so now a bunch of these Satanists need to be exposed. And so you can lay a proper foundation so they cannot claim ignorance. You can demand a common law court. You can know what a true common law court is, so you can tell if they really give you a common law court. You can complain to their judicial council and make sure that you bring up the right issues. You can complain to the politicians. We need to work together to fire these whores who are selling their justice. Okay, it's because we the people have been asleep at the wheel. Okay, that's really the bottom line. Okay, they're not taking care of business. We've abdicated our responsibility. And this is a clip art that I got that fits. You know, never ever ever give up. So what can you do? You make videos, circulate them far wide, send videos to me, I'll circulate them. Realize it is never over until you say it's over. Never ever ever give up. Never give up. It's not over till you say it's over. Always remember that we the people are the ones that are really in control, not a gang of Vatican judicial whores selling their justice, not their hired thugs, not the Canada border pigs, not the U.S., the United Nations border pigs in the U.S. Even a peace officer can do nothing that we ourselves cannot do. So we can refuse to participate in their so-called in their satanic system. It's really what it is. We can educate ourselves about what a common law jury is and what the law of the land is. We can educate ourselves so we know when our rights are being violated. We can educate our public servants because many of them do not know any more than we did. We can educate other people by circulating this video in any other way possible. You know, I mean, there's some people that are getting together and creating little communities and stuff like that, and that's what you have to do, is separate yourself from all of this Satanism. And it's not easy, but it is possible. And it's really hard, you know, I mean, when you're working hourly and they're stealing your money and all sorts of stuff, it's really hard, there's no doubt about it. But it's networking. You got to network with like-minded people, and there are people out there that are doing this stuff, and certainly I'm one of them, and I know a lot of other people that are too. So there's a network. We can educate ourselves so we know when our rights are being violated. We can educate our public servants because many of them do not know any more than we did. Okay, and again, many of them are they don't tell them about this stuff, and especially the peace officers. There's a lot of peace officers that really are trying to do the right thing. Okay, some of them are ignorant, and so we need to educate them, and many of them, if once they understand, that's what that Oath Keepers is all about. And so there's a lot of really good people that are working as peace officers, and they understand their duty in that respect. And so not all of them are Canada border pigs, and or RCMP pigs, or U.S. consulate pigs, but so not all of them are like that. And so somebody sent me an email about my terminology using pigs, and I just want to throw in a little disclaimer for swine. I don't mean anything negative towards swine. Anyways, we can educate other people by circulating this video in any other way possible. We can demand a common law jury of our peers. We can work with our friends and neighbors to reestablish our common law juries and our common law jury courts. We can work with our friends and neighbors to get the United Nations out of America and Canada, anywhere that wants to be free. If we do not do it, then we're at least partially responsible, okay? And so this is when the rubber hits the road, boys and girls. The United Nations owned and operated by the bankster thieves and their Vatican handlers. And this is kind of an interesting little piece of clip art. It's called The Last Great Act of Defiance. I remember when I was in my teens, there was a blacklight poster about the last great act of defiance. And this is not it, so that's why I searched for this, for that, and I couldn't find it, but I did find this. And if you understand, according to Tupper Saucy, the eagle is a symbol of the Catholic Church, if you think, so I mean, if you think about it, the Nazis, Hitler used the eagle as one of his symbols. So the eagle is not just an American symbol, and it is a symbol of the Catholic Church, according to Tupper Saucy, and I think he's probably right. Anyways, and so the mouse is giving him the finger, and at the end of the day, I mean, that's all you can do is just give him the finger and say, screw you, I don't care what you do, I'm not participating. And so, that's the last great act of defiance. So other videos that are coming up is the Satanic Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, Churchianity is Satanism, bankrupt corporate satanic so-called government, satanic bar members, Unidroid is satanic, martial law is here, quasi-contracts and satanic Roman civil law, satanic de facto courts, all courts are satanic ecclesiastical courts, satanic DC courts are everywhere, and jurisdiction in the satanic courts. Upcoming videos, Churchianity and the Satanic Vatican, Satanists in Texas, how to do a habeas corpus dealing with the satanic traffic court thieves, does your government the ultimate solution, common law, the District of Columbia is masquerading as the government of the United States of America. Oh, and one that I haven't got here is I'm seriously thinking about doing one about how the U.S. Congress is racist. And satanic too, quite frankly. But anyways, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group called Administrating Your Public Servants. I've got Vimeo videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for donation. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but it is an extremely less desirable alternative. I can accept IOUs, Federal Reserve notes, PayPal gifts, checks, money orders. Send me an email for particulars. I'm one of those guys that I guess doesn't want to have work, because I've been out of work for 2.5 years. Actually, almost, it'll be 3 in August. And yeah, I've been out of work, and so any donations are appreciated. Send me an email for other copies of documents to, and there's a couple email addresses here. There's also email addresses on the first page. And because Google has been harassing me, shutting down my email from time to time, yeah, try a couple different emails if you don't get me on one. And appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen to my little rant. I tried not to rant and rave too much this time, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.